The 2025 NFL Draft is just about here. Today we are going to be going through an entire 2-round mock draft, kind of my final predictions with where these players might ultimately land and some of the team fits as well based on a lot of the new information that we have. So it's going to be a full predictive mock draft. Since we got 2 rounds, let's just dive right into it here with the Tennessee Titans on the clock at number 1. This is a slam dunk. Cam Ward will be the first overall pick. I feel very confident with that at this point. They're going to get their quarterback of the future. We'll see kind of how they build this team around Cam Ward, but I think that is absolutely going to be where the Titans go with that first overall pick. Then at number 2 with the Cleveland Browns, they could go in a lot of different ways here. Pair Abdul Carter with Myles Garrett, maybe take a quarterback because you really don't have one on this roster. But there's a lot of rumors that right now they're going to be going with Travis Hunter. He's kind of viewed as a wide receiver by them. He could be used as a corner as well. I think they could get very creative with how they use him. Ultimately, they may have to figure out the quarterback position either via trade, maybe for someone like Kirk Cousins, or getting a guy later in this draft if you don't, trust Kenny Pickett. But right now, I think you take the good player in the draft. That's Travis Hunter. He's number 1 on my board personally, so I don't hate that at all for them. And then for the Giants, obviously, quarterback, definitely a question. It could be where they go in this draft. But you have Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston. I'm going to go with the best player on the board. That's Abdul Carter out of Penn State. I don't think any of the quarterbacks are good enough to take number 3 overall. And I think that ultimately taking somebody like Sanders or Jackson Dart is just going to put Brian Daboll's job on the line even more. You go draft a really good player. Maybe you end up trading Thibodeau for another good pick. You find your quarterback later on in this draft that, maybe you can draft and develop. So I'm going to go with Carter at number 3. At number 4 for the Patriots, wouldn't be at all surprised to see them take someone like Tetra McMillan or Ashton Jeanty, one of those skill position type players. But I think ultimately they are going to zero in on the offensive line, whether that's Will Campbell or Armand Membu. I think it'll be one of those 2 players. I'm going to go with Campbell out of LSU. I think there's a lot to like in Campbell's game. He might not be your prototypical size as a left tackle. I think he's most likely going to end up playing guard. And so I could absolutely see the argument for taking Membu at that point. But to me, I just love Campbell. I think he is such a good athlete, such a smooth mover. I think he does have really good hand usage, even if he does have shorter arms as well. So I have Will Campbell going to the Patriots at number 4. Then at number 5, we have the Jaguars taking Mason Graham to add to the interior of that defense. It's an area that they do need to get better at. You could take Ashton Jeanty or McMillan or, one of those guys. I think corner is a big need for this team as well. But for me, Mason Graham on the interior of that defense, I think he's a great run defender, even if he is a little bit undersized, and could be a big-time impact on the middle of that Jaguar defense. Next up at number 6, we have the Raiders. I think this definitely could come down to Membu or Ashton Jeanty. There's been a little bit of steam behind them taking an offensive lineman, but I think with Pete Carroll, he's going to love to run the football. I think Jeanty is just going to be perfect within this Chip Kelly offense. He has great contact balance. They've wanted to run the football in Vegas for a while. You bring in Pete Carroll, who wants to run the football. I think that you need to go get a bell cow back, and you don't have that on your roster at all right now. And it's a really good running back class, but Jeanty is just staring you in the face there. I think he could absolutely be the pick at number 6. At number 7, the Jets. I think if he is on the board when they are up, Armand Membu is absolutely going to be the selection here. You let Morgan Moses walk. I think that you have a little bit of a hole at right tackle, and if you can fix right tackle, you feel pretty good left tackle to right tackle across your entire offensive line. I just think that Membu provides such great athleticism. He did really well against SEC competition. I think the Jets would be very happy to take Membu. I think it would be him or Tyler Warren with that number 7 overall pick, but going to land on the offensive line and take Membu here. And number 8, a guy that I personally don't have as a top 10 player or really anywhere close to it, but definitely think he's going to go in the top 10 most likely. That's Jalen Walker, the linebacker out of Georgia. He is a demon when it comes to blitzing, being able to kind of take advantage of those mismatches, chase down the quarterback on QB spies, things like that. There's a lot of refinement that needs to go into his game. And I do think that he's a little bit of a tweener type. He's not a true edge rusher. He's not a true off-ball linebacker. So the Panthers will have to get creative, but I think that they really like Walker and would like him on that defense for them. And number 9, the Saints. definitely rumors that they could be looking at a quarterback. I'm not sure at number 9. That's kind of where they would be looking because, again, I just don't think these quarterbacks are worth top 10 selections. For the Saints at 9, I'm going to go with Tyler Warren out of Penn State. I think he could provide kind of that versatility, just the kind of do-it-all player that I really feel like the Saints need on offense. You have Chris Olave. I think that some of your other complementary pieces are decent. And yes, you just re-signed Juwan Johnson, but getting somebody like Tyler Warren can just open up so much of the playbook over the middle of the field. Design touches, a lot you can do with Tyler Warren, and I think he's one of the better players in this draft as well. So getting him at number 9, another offensive weapon for whoever the quarterback ends up being, I think makes a lot of sense. Then at number 10 for the Chicago Bears, I think the board did not fall kindly for the Bears here when you had Campbell and Membu go off the board, as well as Tyler Warren and Ashton Jeanty. So I think that if they can't trade out of this pick, you kind of have to look along the defensive line. Yes, you signed Odenigbo from the Colts, but I don't know that he's a true, long-term fix for that solution. I think he's better to be a part of a rotation. And I think that Dennis Allen has proven he likes long, athletic, defensive end types to put in his 4-3 system. Shamar Stewart and Mykel Williams, I think both fit that really well. They're both long, good run defenders, have a ton of athletic traits. Going to go with Shamar Stewart because he's just a freak athlete, and I could absolutely see the Bears really liking him and taking him if some of their other guys like Jeanty and Warren are off the board. At number 11 for the 49ers, I think a lot of people forget just how terrible the interior of this defensive line is. Yes, they need to add to the pass rush really badly, and I think the interior is kind of where that starts. So we're going to go with Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. When he is on, he is great. He has great effort. He's a really good run defender, has great athleticism and really good traits. He's somebody that I do think the teams, as long as the character questions check out, Walter Nolan is going to be a hot commodity. I think it'll be interesting to kind of see because there have been some rumors of questions about his character and effort and motor and that kind of stuff. But when you see him on the field, I think he plays with a great motor, really good relentlessness. So I think Nolan is going to be somebody that still goes pretty high in this draft, despite maybe some potential concerns. At number 12 for the Cowboys, going to go with Tetairoa McMillan out of Arizona. I think they want to add a playmaker, whether that's a wide receiver, a running back, something like that. No wide receivers off the board as of this point in this mock, so they go ahead and take McMillan, kind of the consensus number 1 wide receiver, depending on how you view Travis Hunter. McMillan, he's long, he is a decent athlete, really good in contested catch situations. I think he's a better route runner than some people give it credit for. He'd be a really nice compliment to CeeDee Lamb, getting some size for Dak Prescott in this offense to work with. So I think that fit does make some sense for this Cowboys team. And number 13 for the Dolphins, the back end of this defense, definitely kind of big-time question marks across the board, especially with the potential departure of Jalen Ramsey if that ends up happening. We're going to go to the safety position, and PFF's real low on him, but I guarantee you Nick Emanwari is going in the first round. He's athletic, went to, an SEC school, played really well against good competition. Sometimes he doesn't play quite as big as he is, but he's athletic. He can cover tight ends, running backs out of the backfield and man coverage. I think his instincts are decent. He'll come up and hit and be physical. So I think Emanwari makes a lot of sense to add to this defense. He's going to go very high in this draft. I would say he is most likely going to be, a top 25 pick in this draft. So I think the Dolphins could absolutely be a final landing spot for him at number 13. Next up at 14, the Colts. We are going to go back to the tight end Colston Loveland out of Michigan. There are some rumors that potentially he could be dealing with some injury concerns. So we'll see. Maybe that ends up dropping Loveland a little bit further than other people expect. But I think Loveland's a really good addition to this offense. Whether it's Anthony Richardson or, one of the other guys. I think that you need to get a guy over the middle of the field that can go win routes against linebackers and safeties. Loveland's a really good separator, has good hands. I think he's a little bit of a better blocker than people give him credit for as well. So Loveland at number 14 to the Colts. Number 15 for the Falcons. They need to add to the pass rush. I do think they like Mykel Williams out of Georgia. He's long, he's athletic, he's a really good run defender. That's kind of gives him a really high floor at that edge rush position. He's kind of a big, full-size type end. And then, with him, the pass rush moves do need to come along, but there's a lot of traits that you do like. He was derailed by injuries a bit this year and maybe wasn't able to reach his full potential, but I think the league is very high on Mykel Williams. Would expect him to definitely be a first-round pick here. At number 16, the Cardinals up next. We're going to go with Mike Green out of Marshall. Really productive at Marshall, played really well against the Ohio State and Virginia Tech competition when he played them. There's off the field question marks for sure with Mike Green. We'll kind of see where that ends up affecting his range, but I think the Cardinals need to add a pass rusher. Makes a lot of sense to add somebody with the physical prowess of Mike Green, has really good explosiveness, even if he's not the biggest guy, plays physical as well. So I think that Jonathan Gannon could absolutely like adding a guy like that to his front. And then for the Bengals at number 17, definitely a couple ways they could go here. Guard, defensive end, safety, I think is on the board as well. I could see them liking Starks. But the person with the most buzz kind of for the Bengals right now is Derek Harmon out of Oregon. Somebody that can get after the passer. He led the nation in pressures as an interior defensive lineman. He played at Michigan State at, 340 pounds, was huge, bulked down basically. Ended up losing a bunch of weight, became really productive in the passing game, but he still has a lot of technique from when he was huge as a nose tackle for Michigan State. Good run defender. I think he makes a lot of sense for this Bengals team at 17. At number 18, I think this is an incredibly obvious fit, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if the Seahawks end up taking Gray Zabel. I think he's going to be best as a center, but regardless of if he's a center or a guard, he fits perfectly within the system. I think he is a really good value at this spot as well. It's a big position to need. To me, it just makes way too much sense for Zabel to go at number 18 to the Seahawks. Another very popular fit, but again, it makes a lot of sense. Jahad Campbell out of Alabama going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He can learn with Levante David, pair them together for kind of the time being. Campbell, as long as the injury concerns with a shoulder check out, I think he's really athletic, he's physical. He's just somebody that, to me, has a lot of really good traits and should be a really high pick in this draft. I think the Buccaneers love his versatility to play maybe a little bit of edge rusher as well. So Jahad Campbell at number 19 to the Buccaneers makes a lot of sense to me. Then at number 20, decided to do our one and only trade of this mock draft. Don't want to predict too many trades in a final mock draft because it's just so hard to predict. But I do think that the Browns, there's a very good chance that they try to move up into this first round again and go get their quarterback. For the Broncos, it makes a little bit of sense to, trade back a couple of spots, trade out of the first round, but you have a big chunk of guys who I think are viewed very similarly probably. So we're going to go ahead and force this trade here, have the Browns up at number 20, and this is a fun fit, having them take Shedeur Sanders. We already had them taking Travis Hunter at number 2 overall. Pairing the two of them back together, you get your quarterback of the future. I think, there's limits to what Sanders can be, but you jump the Steelers, who I do think would take Sanders at number 21 if he was available. So you get your quarterback, you prevent your division rival from doing so, you pair the two of them up together. I think it could be a very interesting storyline, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns are exploring kind of trade scenarios like this and go get their signal caller. Even if, I don't think he's the highest ceiling prospect, I think this is much more where I would feel comfortable with Sanders going. Then at number 21, like I said, I think that the Steelers would take Sanders if he was there. I don't know that they would take Jackson Dart just straight up at number 21. They certainly could. I think it absolutely could happen, but I am going to have them wait and, look at other options. Have them definitely explore taking a guy like Marion Hampton, but end up with Kenneth Grant. I think they want to add to the interior of that defensive line. Cam Hayward was continuously really good last year, but you just can't expect that to happen forever. Keanu Benton, I think, is a solid player, but I think you can definitely get tougher on the interior here, and going to have the Steelers taking Kenneth Grant at number 21. At 22, I think the Chargers really would have wanted Kenneth Grant. Obviously, the Michigan tie there, but we're going to go ahead and have them take their running back, Marion Hampton. Great contact balance, bruiser type that definitely is someone Harbaugh would really like, and I think they want to get tougher running the football, and Hampton absolutely helps you do that. At number 23, the Packers. I think corner is definitely a big need. We'll see what happens with Jair Alexander, but even still, I think corner is a need. Jahdae Barron, Will Johnson, both still on the board here. We're going to go with Will Johnson. Yes, there are some long speed concerns, but I think Will Johnson is a really good player in this class. I still have him as a top 10 player myself. I think getting him at number 23 would be a steal. I think he fits the system pretty well as well. He plays a lot of off-zone coverage, and I think that makes a lot of sense for this scheme. Then the Vikings, we're going to go Jahdae Barron at number 24. Versatile defender, might be best in the slot. He can play a little safety. He played outside corner this year at Texas as well, and I thought was pretty good in that role. So I think you trust Brian Flores to, get the most out of this guy in the back end of the defense, and I think Barron's a very good value at number 24 as well. Number 25, the Texans. I think this is ultimately going to be an offensive tackle after trading Laramie Tunsil. I think Josh Simmons or Josh Conerly are going to be the two that are in consideration here. I'm going to go with Conerly because Simmons just has that, patella injury that's pretty tough to come back from. I think Conerly is a smooth mover. He's athletic, can be that left tackle of the future for this team. At number 26, the Rams on the clock. I went with Maxwell Hairston, the corner out of Kentucky. Somebody I do think is going to sneak into the back end of round one. Ran incredibly fast at the combine. Really good zone instincts. I think he's somebody that, can come up, close really quickly on routes in front of him. I think that's something that the Rams do value. Again, another guy with potential off the field concerns that may affect his draft range, but I think there is a lot to like in Hairston's game and have him go at number 26 to the Rams. At number 27, the Ravens. This is what they do when good players fall to them. They take them. Malachi Starks, the safety out of Georgia. He's somebody that maybe had a little bit of a down year in 2024, but still really good. He's instinctual. He doesn't have elite athleticism, but is plenty good enough with his great instinct. So I think pairing him and Kyle Hamilton together would be awesome for this Ravens defense. And the Ravens just make a habit of taking players like this that fall into their laps, and Malachi Starks is no exception. At number 28, the Lions on the clock up next. We are going to go with Tyler Booker out of Alabama. I think that Kevin Zeitler leaves a little bit of a hole on that offensive guard spot. Booker is this big physical guy. He needs to go to the right scheme, but I think the Lions are the right scheme. He needs to go to a team that won't rely too much on his athleticism. He can just run a lot of gap and power, be a great pass protector. That's exactly what the Lions are looking for. So Booker at number 28 makes a ton of sense here. Number 29, the Commanders. Going to go with Matthew Golden, the wide receiver out of Texas. Ran a blazing fast 40 time at the combine. I think continuing to add weapons for Jaden Daniels is huge. Terry McLaurin, he is, a really good solid receiver. Deebo Samuel, kind of more your underneath gadget type player. Matthew Golden fits perfectly as that Z wide receiver, somebody that can be your deep threat, take the top off of defense. I think that fit makes a ton of sense for them at number 29. Next up, the Bills at number 30. We're going to go Donovan Ozeruaku out of Boston College. He is not the biggest guy, but he does have long arms. He has a great pass rush arsenal, a lot of different moves he can go to. Somebody that can just get after the passer. I think that's what the Bills need, and Ozeruaku just provides a little bit different from some of the big, long-arm physical guys that you have, somebody like Rousseau. So I think that he could provide a really nice pass rushing bump to this Bills team. Number 31, the Chiefs would be ecstatic to get Josh Simmons here at left tackle. He would be much higher pick than this if he did not suffer that injury. Take that left tackle that can potentially be your tackle of the future. Yes, they did pay, a left tackle decent money in free agency, but I don't think that, prevents you from taking someone like Simmons if he's available at number 31. And then at number 32, the Eagles. This one was tough. You could definitely add to the edge rush room. You could add, to the defensive line or the offensive line, but I went with the fun route. I'm not sure if this is what the Eagles would do, but I'm going to go Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. You obviously already have A.J. Brown, but it sounds like, that relationship is a little bit rocky at times. You have Devontae Smith. Emeka Egbuka just fits perfectly into the slot there. I think that, Jahan Dotson is not amazing, and you get a massive upgrade with somebody like Egbuka in the slot that really can unlock your passing game. I could see a world where you can absolutely at least make a good case that would be a good selection for the Eagles. So that's what we went with at number 32. Moving on to round two, we have the Broncos on the clock first here after trading back with the Browns. And I think they'd be pretty happy to get Luther Burden out of Missouri, the wide receiver. He's kind of that guy that you can get design touches to, have him kind of in the underneath area. He also can be explosive as a downfield threat. I think the ball in his hands, he's incredibly dangerous, and that's something that the Broncos are really looking for. So I think that makes sense for them at number 33. The Giants at number 34, we had them taking Abdul Carter. This is where I think it makes sense to take a swing on a quarterback. I'm not the biggest Jackson Dart fan, but I do think he's going to go really high early day 2 or even late day 1. So this makes sense for where he might end up. And I think Dart and Carter feels a lot better than taking, Shedeur and then trying to fill the other holes on your roster. So I think that makes sense for the Giants at 34. Number 35, the Titans. You get your franchise quarterback in Cam Ward. Go get him a wide receiver, because this wide receiver room, Calvin Ridley, Treylon Burks, it's just not good enough. And Jaden Higgins is somebody I think absolutely is going to be in this conversation. He's big, he's physical, wins contested catches, runs pretty good routes, has a good release package as well. Doesn't create great separation, but he can be that big ball-winning type that you really don't have on your roster right now for the Titans. And so I think that makes sense. I could absolutely see them pairing Higgins with Cam Ward as kind of that rookie 1-2 punch. We had the Jaguars selecting Mason Graham in the first. I think somebody that is going to go much higher than people expect is Mason Taylor, the tight end from LSU. He's a smooth mover, really good athlete, was really productive. Came in as a true freshman and really competed at LSU. And I think he's going to be a high to mid second round pick. And so I could absolutely see the Jaguars really liking him and, adding him to that offense to maybe take it to the next level over the middle of the field. Next up, we have the Raiders. We had them taking Genty in the first round. We're going to have them getting tougher in the trenches. That's kind of the Pete Carroll way. And we are going to have them taking Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State. Great run defender, somebody that just clogs up multiple gaps. He can two-gap as a run defender, penetrate into the backfield. Doesn't have a ton of juice as a pass rusher, but I think the Raiders just want to get tougher in the trenches. And to me, Tyleik Williams is a great way of doing that. At number 38, the Patriots on the clock. Once again, I think weapons is going to be the name of the game. We had them taking Will Campbell to help protect him. There's some other people that you could take. Somebody like Kelvin Banks. Maybe, you believe in him, or Will Campbell at tackle, Donovan Jackson. You could absolutely add quality players to this offensive line, but I think wide receiver is going to be where they go. And Kyle Williams is somebody that is shot up draft boards, and I think to the point that there's a pretty good chance he goes in round 2. He provides a little bit something different than some of the other guys on this roster. He's a good yak threat despite being a little bit of a smaller guy. Provides big-time explosiveness, big downfield threat. I think Kyle Williams absolutely could be someone they are interested in at number 38. For the Bears at number 39, they did a lot of work on their offensive line, and I think you could definitely go without taking an offensive lineman. But with Kelvin Banks staring you in the face here, at number 39 overall, we're going to have them take Kelvin Banks. Maybe he ends up being the left tackle of the future if you move on from Braxton Jones next year when he's a free agent. Maybe he plays guard if Jonah Jackson isn't really good enough to start. I think you can be creative, and Banks helps you get the best 5 guys out there. To me, I am a little bit lower on Banks, but I think at 39, this would be an excellent value selection and somebody I think the Bears would be very ecstatic to get with that pick. Number 40 for the Saints, we're going to go with Nick Scourton out of Texas A&M, another guy where they need to add to this defensive line, get some pressure. 2 years ago when he was at Purdue, he was excellent. Put on some weight, didn't look quite as good this year at Texas A&M, but still someone I do think will be a second-round pick, can provide some good production and be a good run defender if nothing else. So that's going to be the pick for the Saints at 40. Then at number 41 for the Chicago Bears, going to add to the running back room. Definitely a lot of guys you could take. Judkins, Henderson, Caleb Johnson. I'm a little bit lower on Sampson, but Scadaboo's there as well. I'm going to go Quinshon Judkins. He showed that he is really athletic. I think he's more of kind of that bell cow back. You already have DeAndre Swift, who's kind of more of the change of pace, lightning to someone's thunder. I think Judkins absolutely can kind of be that thunder element of the Ben Johnson offense. He can play the David Montgomery role, and I think that makes sense for the Bears to select at number 41 here. The Jets at number 42, we are going to have them taking a swing on a quarterback here, Jalen Milroe. To me, he is really, really talented, and maybe he ends up being kind of this offensive weapon because I think his best traits are him running the football and his freaky athleticism. He has a good arm, and you could absolutely run a lot of trick plays with him, but maybe, you have Justin Fields, Jalen Milroe. You could get really creative with doing a lot of similar things. I think Milroe's a guy who needs to sit, but Fields is probably not a bad player for him to learn from. I think, Fields absolutely has areas he needs to improve, but a lot of the things Fields does well, Milroe also does well. So I'm not sure if the Jets would take a quarterback in round 2, but I think Milroe is going to go somewhere in this range. So it does make sense if the Jets end up kind of going that route at 42. At number 43 for the 49ers, I had them taking Walter Nolan in the first round. We're going to have more pass rush. This defensive line outside of Nick Bosa is terrible. And Robert Saleh coming back, he values the defensive line, being able to get after the passer so much. James Pierce Jr., who knows with the off-the-field concerns? To me, he was a top 10 talent before the character concerns came up. He is somebody that has a great arsenal of pass rush moves. He's athletic, thought he was better against the running game. There's just a lot of really scary reports about his character. But mid-second round, when you don't have a lot on this roster as far as the pass rush goes, I can definitely see the 49ers kind of doubling up on the defensive line and taking someone like James Pierce Jr. at 43. The Cowboys up next at number 44. We're going to go with a running back here. You took Tetairoa McMillan in the first round. We're going to go Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. Big physical running back. He's somebody that in an outside zone system, I think he can be really solid and effective in that area. So I think that this does make sense for the Cowboys to kind of do the wide receiver then the running back. I don't think you need to force the running back pick in the first round, and Caleb Johnson makes a lot of sense at 44 here. The Colts up next. You lost E.J. Speed. I think you need to add to this linebacker room. You don't have a lot in that area, and Carson Schlesinger is somebody who has shot up draft boards a little bit, especially as kind of that weak side outside linebacker who can, diagnose, make plays in the passing game, but is really athletic. I think Schlesinger absolutely kind of fits that mold and makes sense for the Colts. And then at number 46 for the Falcons, going to add to the interior of this offensive line. I think that, center is absolutely an area that they would be really, really happy to add to. And Jared Wilson, I think, is somebody that, is probably going to be a second-round pick, maybe a third-round pick. I do think teams are going to be relatively high on him. You lost Drew Dahlman to the Bears, so we're going to go Jared Wilson. Continuing that Georgia to Atlanta pipeline that we started in the first round with Mykel Williams, adding his teammate Jared Wilson at number 46. At number 47, the Arizona Cardinals on the clock. I think adding to the guard position would be big for this team. And what better than pairing, Paris Johnson Jr. along with Donovan Jackson, former teammates. And I think that Jackson would slide in nicely into that guard spot and provide some stability for this offensive line in the interior there. At number 48 for the Miami Dolphins, we had them adding Nick Ebenworry, but I'm going to continue to add to the secondary. Going to take Trey Amos out of Ole Miss. He's somebody that, is very scheme versatile, can play in press man, good in off zone as well. I think he can just be a really good, kind of weapon on that back end of the defense to pair with Ebenworry to really fix this secondary, which has been a big time problem for this defense. Then for the Bengals at number 49, I think safety and guard are going to be in consideration here. You have Xavier Watts. Al Golden worked with Xavier Watts at Notre Dame, has had pretty much nothing but great things to say about him. You also have the interior of the offensive line, which is a big-time need. Tate Ratledge there. You also have, other guys that you could potentially move into the interior. Jonah Savanaia, I think, is definitely somebody that they do like as well. But we are ultimately going to go to that safety position. I don't think safety is very deep in this class. Xavier Watts is a playmaker on the back end of that defense. The Bengals really need to upgrade this safety position, and they know that as well. So we're going to have the Bengals taking Watts at number 49. The Seahawks at number 50. I think that this is just a fit that makes so much sense for this team. Darian Porter out of Iowa State, he's very much kind of in that Tariq Woolen type mold that Schneider really likes with the Seahawks team. He's long, he's athletic, has good ball skills as a former wide receiver. He is a late breakout and, didn't have a ton of experience starting out at corner. He was a special teams demon for a while, but I think he just fits the mold, and I think the Seahawks could absolutely really like Porter at number 50. The Broncos at number 51, I think they want to get better on the interior of this defensive line as well. They have a couple guys with expiring contracts that they can kind of get a year ahead on. And we're going to go TJ Sanders out of South Carolina. Great bull rush, somebody that has really good movement ability. He's not quite the run stuffer that you would, want on the interior, but he's less than 300 pounds or, right around there. He's somebody that has a great variety of moves, really explosive, very much a disruptive force on the interior of that defense. So going to have the Broncos take him at 51. And then the Seahawks back on the clock. We had them taking Gray's Abel. Like I said, I think he's going to play center for them, and that would be his best position. Why not double dip on the interior? Take another really athletic dude, Tate Ratledge, who was a team captain. I just think it makes a ton of sense to just really shore up the interior of this offensive line, because Sam Darnold does have issues with interior pressure, and getting Ratledge and Zabel really helps kind of alleviate a lot of the concern with that. The Buccaneers on the clock at number 53. We're going to have them taking a corner, and that's Savone Revel out of East Carolina. Had a pretty bad knee injury this season that kept him out of pretty much all of the season, as well as the NFL Combine and all the draft kind of off-season stuff. So I think that's the reason that he might fall in this draft. But he has some really good tape. I think he can be a little bit stiff, but he's really fast. He's big. He's athletic. He'll come up and tackle. In the second round, I think it's a worthwhile swing for the Buccaneers at 53. At number 54, the Packers on the clock here. I'm going to have them taking a wide receiver. They need to get more reliable, and I could see them going in a lot of different ways, but Jack Bech, I think, makes sense for them. He's kind of that possession receiver. He's not the most physically imposing, has great hands, unlike pretty much every other wide receiver on this team, and I think he can just kind of be that more reliable, over-the-middle type player that I think Jordan Love really does need, somebody he can just rely on, and I think that makes sense for Bech to go to that system and kind of be that reliable underneath security blanket possession type wide receiver. The Chargers up next at number 55. Going to go with Alec Iamanair out of Stanford. He's somebody I really like. He's a big kind of physical guy that they don't really have. Obviously, you have Quentin Johnston, but I think Iamanair just provides kind of more of that contested catch ability, somebody that can, be a true X wide receiver, win downfield, win off the ball, win on press, be a good run blocker. I think that kind of embodies a lot of the things that the Chargers really do like, and Iamanair, I think, is a pretty good value myself. At number 55, I'm a big fan of his game. The Bills at number 56. I think the safety position is a really underrated need for this team. You have Cole Bishop, but the other guys there are just not super inspiring. So I am going to go ahead and take Kevin Winston out of Penn State. Dealt with injuries, only really got to play a game and a half this year in 2024, but in 2023, he was a really good player. He's a good athlete. He can come up and be physical and tackle. Pretty good coverage ability as well. So he has potential to be a really good value due to kind of the injury discount you're getting on him in the second round. The Panthers at number 57, going to have them taking Ben Morrison out of Notre Dame, another guy who you're getting a big-time injury discount on. Based on his tape from, 2023, he's definitely expected to be a first-round pick, maybe even a top 10 pick. Dealt with a kind of scary hip injury that can definitely affect a corner's ability to turn and run. So that drops him a little bit. Big time uncertainty. I wouldn't be surprised if, he slips a little bit further than even people are expecting. But I think Morrison is a really talented player the last time we saw him on the field. So we're going to kind of slot him in at number 57 to the Panthers there. At number 58, the Texans. I think they want to get another weapon. A lot of uncertainty around Tank Dell with his injuries. You have Nico Collins, but Stephon Diggs is no longer there. We're going to go with Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. Big physical guy. He's athletic, put up good production against a bunch of, cupcakes early in the season and then got injured. He doesn't run a diverse route tree, but, we've seen success with guys coming out of Ole Miss like A.J. Brown, like DK Metcalf, who were in a very similar situation. I don't think Harris is as good as those guys, but I could definitely still see him being an intriguing second-round pick for this Texans team. The Ravens at number 59, we are going to go with an edge rusher, Braden Swinson out of LSU. Big time fan of Swinson's game. I think he does a lot of things really effectively. He's a good pass rusher, can win with power, speed to power, can win around the edge, is a good solid run defender. I just think he does everything at a pretty good level, and I think the Ravens need to add someone like that to their defensive line. And then the Lions kind of doing something very similar. Landon Jackson, a great run defender, very athletic. He's somebody that, kind of killed the combine. I think he can continue to develop pass rush moves and everything, but I think adding another big physical guy on that defensive end where, you have Hutchinson lined way up out wide, and then you have another guy like Landon Jackson on the other side who can be a great run defender, can kind of take on more of that true 5-tech role, while Hutchinson can be that wide, true wide 9 or 7 kind of rusher where he can really come screaming off the edge. I think that makes sense for the Lions continuing to add to the trenches there. At number 61, the Commanders on the clock. I'm going to go with a running back. Austin Eckler, getting up there in age. I think Henderson fills a very similar type role, but he's younger, great pass protector, has good burst and explosiveness. I think they just want to continue to add to that part of their offense, get more explosive, get, really good pass protection for Jaden Daniels. Henderson does both of those things. He's a great leader as well. So I think that could be a very interesting fit for them at 61. The Bills back on the clock here. We had them taking Kevin Winston. I'm going to go with a corner. It's kind of in a similar mold as Kyrie Elam, that big physical guy, but Azareye'h Thomas, one of the youngest players in this draft. I think he needs to get better ball skills. I think there's a lot he can work on as far as, his speed and explosiveness. That's just not strengths of his game, but, he is a guy who is physical. He's young. He's got long arms. I think he could be a very intriguing option for the Bills at the back end of the second round here. With the Chiefs taking offensive line in the first, we're going to go defensive line in the second. Omar Norman-Lott, someone I am really high on. I think his pass rushing prowess on the interior of the defensive line is really impressive. Great pass rush win rate. He's somebody that was on a bit of a snap count just for whatever reason. Tennessee has really weird kind of pass rush packages from their defensive linemen, but when he was out there, I thought he was really disruptive. So I think the Chiefs adding him next to Chris Jones would be ideal for this defense. Then the Eagles at number 64 on the clock here are going to go look at the edge rush room. I think Tuimoloau maybe doesn't really fit the mold that they're looking for, kind of that outside linebacker hybrid type player. We're going to go with Oluwafemi Oladejo out of UCLA. Played off-ball linebacker, so he has a little bit of some coverage instincts. And then he's also somebody that's kind of shot up draft boards as well as far as his ability to, rush the passer. He's very new at that, but I think he showed some promise and definitely could end up being somewhat of a late second, early third round player. So I do think that Oladejo makes sense for that Eagles team. That is my final 2025 NFL 2-round mock draft here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. This is what I predict is going to happen when draft time comes around on Thursday night. So who do you want your favorite team to take? Who do you think they will take? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like NFL draft content, we're going to have a lot more coming to you over the next week. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one.